Mortal Kombat has over 80 characters on its roster, but only a handful of them have ever truly mattered. From a specter that can't stay dead, to a Hollywood actor who was secretly powerful enough to punch a god, to a sorcerer who got his entire kit from an arcade machine running out of memory. These 8 fighters shaped every tournament, every storyline, and every conversation this franchise has ever had. Today, we're breaking down the best fighters in Mortal Kombat, and exactly what makes each of them undeniable. Starting with the one character the developers themselves call the face of the franchise. Scorpion. Here's the thing about Scorpion, he is technically a palette swap. The original MK team was so limited on time and resources that when they needed more fighters, John Tobias just took Sub-Zero, changed the color to yellow, and called it a day. Same model, same animations, 0 unique assets, and somehow that copy became more iconic than the original. Before you chalk that up to marketing or nostalgia, hear me out, because the gap between what Scorpion is on paper and what he became in the lore is one of the most interesting stories in fighting game history. Scorpion's real name is Hanzo Hasashi, and he was the greatest warrior of the Shirai Ryu clan. He had a family, he had a code, he was not a villain. Then Quan Chi, a sorcerer working in the shadows, massacred the entire Shirai Ryu clan, his men, his wife, his children, and framed Bihan, the Lin Kuei assassin who would become Sub-Zero for the murders. Hanzo tracked down Bihan, killed him, and then died shortly after. The Elder Gods offered him resurrection. He accepted, and that's where things get complicated, because here's where it gets weird. Scorpion didn't come back as a hero looking for justice. He came back as a Hellfire Spectre with one directive: kill Sub-Zero. For decades of in-universe time, he hunted the wrong man. He killed Bihan, not knowing Bihan was actually innocent of the massacre. He spent his entire afterlife pursuing a vendetta built on a lie Quan Chi planted. And the kicker? Even after he learned the truth, which didn't happen until MK4, the rage didn't just vanish. Scorpion dragged Quan Chi into hell with him, and even that wasn't the end of it. In MKX, restored to his human form as Hanzo, he rebuilt the Shirai Ryu from nothing, trained Kenshi's son Takeda as a personal student, and eventually cut Quan Chi's head off, his ultimate act of vengeance. But the timing was wrong. Killing Quan Chi at that exact moment prevented a curse reversal that could have saved Liu Kang, Kung Lao, Kitana, and the rest of the fallen heroes still trapped as revenants. His greatest victory cost everyone else enormously. In MK11, Hanzo dies accepting that cycle of destruction had to end. His final words to his past self, a past self who is seconds from making the same mistakes he made, are, "I let go my rage, and it saved me. To save yourself, you must do the same." He died for it, literally, stabbed by Devora, bleeding out, telling himself to be better. That's the lore case. But the gameplay case for Scorpion is just as strong, and it starts with one word: Toasty. Get Over Here was never scripted. Ed Boon voiced it himself because MK had zero budget for professional voice acting. Boon had been recording yells for arcade games and pinball machines where players just scream ridiculous things during gameplay. He thought it would be funny to have Scorpion yell something when throwing his spear. He improvised it in a single session. That line became so embedded in gaming culture that Boon earned a Guinness World Record in 2010 for longest serving video game voice actor for that one phrase, repeated across 18 years and a dozen games. The Toasty Fatality. Scorpion rips off his own mask, reveals a flaming skull underneath, and breathes hellfire directly into the opponent's face until they're a skeleton. Was ranked the second greatest fatality in MK history by IGN. It was also the move that turned Scorpion from a palette swap into a mascot. Nobody who saw that fatality for the first time forgot it. Competitively, Scorpion sits in a fascinating contradiction. He's the most played character across online, ranked in almost every MK game, and competitive analysts calculated that he and Sub-Zero are tied for the most top-tier placements in franchise history, 5 times each. But he's rarely the character winning EVO. He's dominant in casual play, deeply respected in competitive circles, and universally recognized as MK's mascot. The NetherRealm Studios logo literally depicts him mid-throw. He is on every piece of promotional material, every box, every trailer. The 2023 MK1 reboot recast Scorpion entirely, now Kuai Liang beneath the mask instead of Hanzo, and the community debated it for months, which tells you everything about how much ownership fans feel over this character. But if Scorpion is the face of Mortal Kombat, there's one character who literally changed the entire gaming industry just by pulling a spine out through someone's neck: Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero is the only character in gaming history whose fatality created a government agency. That's not hyperbole, that's documented congressional record. On September 13th, 1993, Mortal Monday, Mortal Kombat launched on home consoles. A senator's aide saw his son playing it. Specifically, he saw Sub-Zero reach into an opponent's chest, grab the spine, and rip the entire skeleton out through the neck. The head stays attached. The vertebrae dangle. The corpse drops. Senator Joe Lieberman launched formal congressional hearings. On December 9, 1993, Sega and Nintendo representatives testified before the Senate Subcommittee on Juvenile Justice, with Lieberman literally wheeling in a CRT television and playing the spine rip for sitting U.S. senators. The result was the Entertainment Software Rating Board, the ESRB, founded in 1994. Every game rating you have ever seen on a box, every M for mature label, every parental advisory sticker exists because Sub-Zero pulled a spine out of someone in 1992. One fatality changed the entire gaming industry. But here's where it gets more interesting. Because Sub-Zero is not one person. He never was. The original Sub-Zero, Bi-Han, was the ruthless Lin Kuei assassin who Scorpion killed in MK1. He came back, not as Sub-Zero, as Noob Saibot, a shadow wraith operating in darkness, with a name that Ed Boon hid in plain sight for years. Noob Saibot is Boon, and Tobias spelled backwards. Boon added the character to MK2 as a secret fighter, without even telling co-creator John Tobias. Tobias discovered it when he played the finished game. The Sub-Zero who shows up from MK2 onward is Kuai Liang, Bi-Han's younger brother who took the name and the mantle. And where Bi-Han was cold and ruthless, Kuai Liang is the one who genuinely wrestles with morality. He's the one who fled the Lin Kuei's Cyber Initiative, a program forcibly converting warriors into cyborgs, and the one who eventually becomes Grandmaster of the entire clan, reforming it from a criminal assassination guild into something that actually protects people. In MK9, he gets forcibly converted into Cyber Sub-Zero anyway, stripped of his identity, turned into a machine, and then he gets his humanity back. He is the only cyber ninja in the entire franchise who ever did. That detail matters because it sets him apart from Sector, from Cyrax, from every other Lin Kuei who went through the same process and lost themselves completely. Both brothers are descended from an exiled Edenian race called Cryomancers, beings with innate ice manipulation in their bloodline. This isn't a power they trained into, it's genetic, which is why Kuai Liang's abilities dramatically amplified the moment he claimed the Dragon Medallion. The medallion doesn't give him power, it unlocks what was already there. After that point, he's freezing full city blocks, constructing building-sized ice structures mid-fight, and generating cold that counters direct flamethrowers. In MK1 2023, the entire dynamic flips. Bi-Han is Sub-Zero again, and is the primary villain of the game, betraying Earthrealm and aligning with forces working against Liu Kang's new timeline. Kuai Liang becomes Scorpion, breaking from his brother to found the Shirai Ryu himself. The two brothers essentially traded destinies in a new universe. It's the kind of long-game storytelling that rewards people who have followed this franchise for decades. Competitively, Sub-Zero is exactly what you'd expect from his lore standing. Consistently strong, occasionally dominant, never irrelevant. The ice clone technique borders on unfair in casual play across every game it appears in. He and Scorpion are tied for the most top-tier placements in franchise history at 5 apiece. He's not always the EVO champion, but he is always in the conversation, always feared, and always the character whose freeze prompt makes online opponents pause just a little too long before they get punished for it. The thing that separates Sub-Zero from every other character in this entire video, though, is legacy weight. He was the first character ever designed for Mortal Kombat. John Tobias sketched him simply as Ninja before anything else existed. He was also the first MK character to receive his own spin-off game, and the censorship Nintendo forced on SNES, replacing the spine rip with a freeze and shatter, accidentally made the replacement so satisfying that it became a permanent part of Sub-Zero's moveset. A censorship decision stuck around for 30 years. That's the kind of staying power that doesn't come from marketing. It comes from the character being genuinely irreplaceable. But while Sub-Zero built his legacy on creating a rating system, the next character built his by inheriting a mantle nobody wanted to give him, and then becoming a literal god, Liu Kang. Liu Kang is the canonical champion of Mortal Kombat. He has won the tournament more times than any other fighter in franchise history. He defeated Shang Tsung, Goro, and Shao Kahn across 4 consecutive tournaments in the original timeline. No other character comes close to that record. He is also the only character to appear in every single Mortal Kombat game ever made. And yet, for most of the franchise's history, the community treated him like a background character. There is a Reset Era thread titled Liu Kang went from being the face of his series to constantly forgotten or even outright shat on. It has thousands of replies. Ed Boon himself compared cutting Liu Kang from the story to doing Star Wars without Luke Skywalker. Both things are true simultaneously, which is either a failure of character writing or a fascinating case study in what happens when the protagonist is too clean to be interesting, probably both. But the lore case for Liu Kang is airtight, and it only gets stronger the further into the franchise you go. His original death in Deadly Alliance 2002 hit differently than any other MK moment up to that point. Shang Tsung and Quan Chi worked together, double-teamed him, and snapped his neck while he was restrained. The heroes lost completely. No dramatic last stand. No final defiance. The champion of Mortal Kombat died while being held in place. His zombie resurrection in Deception made it worse. A corrupted Raiden literally weaponized Liu Kang's reanimated corpse against his own allies. The spirit was separate from the body. He was watching it happen and couldn't stop it. The reboot timeline amplified everything. In MK9, after Shao Kahn kills Kung Lao, Liu Kang defeats Kahn in the tournament, and then gets accidentally killed by Raiden's lightning. Not by a villain, by his own mentor. In a moment of desperation and miscalculation, he dies angry. He comes back in MKX as a bitter revenant who crowns himself and Katana rulers of the Netherrealm, which is exactly what happens when you kill the guy who was supposed to represent humanity's best qualities and then leave him to rot in the worst realm in existence. Here's where it gets good. MK11 reveals that Kronika, the Keeper of Time, manipulated Raiden and Liu Kang into fighting each other across every single timeline. She was afraid of what they could accomplish together, so she engineered their conflict deliberately, over and over, across every version of history. The moment Raiden finally figures this out, his solution is to merge his own divine essence with Liu Kang entirely, sacrificing his godhood. Fire God Liu Kang is the result, a fighter wielding both fire and lightning, who defeats the elder god Cetrion, destroys Kronika herself, and becomes the new Keeper of Time. He literally creates a new universe from scratch. The boring protagonist who the community mocked for 2 decades was the most important character in the entire franchise the whole time. The godhood was always his. Kronika just spent thousands of years trying to prevent him from claiming it. MK1 2023 is the payoff. Liu Kang is now the god who built the current timeline, recruited every champion, and serves as Earthrealm's protector. MK1 is also the first mainline game in the franchise to put Liu Kang on the box art, breaking Scorpion and Sub-Zero's unbroken promotional monopoly. The origin details are strange and worth knowing. He was almost named Minamoto Yoshitsune. The team couldn't deal with the name. He was renamed Liu Kang after actor Gordon Liu from the 36th Chamber of Shaolin. The Bruce Lee resemblance came from a costume decision. Actor Ho Sung Pak refused to shave his head for the bald monk design. The team reworked the look and accidentally landed on something that visually invoked Lee. Ed Boon voiced Liu Kang's battle cries in MK2 himself, sounds he later described as embarrassingly chicken-like, and Ho Sung Pak played both Liu Kang and Shang Tsung in the original MK1. The hero and the villain were the same actor. Nobody noticed for years. Competitively, he is S tier in MK11, one of the absolute best characters in that game. Ninja Killa famously used Liu Kang to defeat Sonic Fox at DreamHack Montreal 2019. He was also top tier in MK2 and consistently mid to high tier across the rest of the franchise, with one exception, UMK3, where he placed 17th out of 23 characters on the competitive tier list. Even the boring protagonist has one bad game, but only one, and when the timeline finally gave him what he earned, it made every mediocre chapter worth it. If Liu Kang is the champion who finally got his throne, the next character is the mentor who spent 3 decades trying to help him get there and making everything worse every single time. Raiden. Raiden is the god of thunder, Earthrealm's eternal protector, and the single most well-intentioned character in the franchise. He is also directly responsible for more deaths than most of the villains. That is not a joke. That is the entire arc. John Tobias visited Chicago's Field Museum, saw a statue of Raijin, the Japanese thunder god, and decided Mortal Kombat needed a deity in the roster. The visual look came from Lightning, a character in Big Trouble in Little China, 1986. The conical hat, the crackling energy, the otherworldly presence. Tobias was clear that Lightning had zero characterization in common with Raiden. He just liked the hat. What they built around that hat became one of gaming's most complex mentor figures. In the original timeline, Raiden works. He guides Earthrealm's champions, keeps Shao Kahn at bay, watches Liu Kang win 4 consecutive tournaments. Then MK9 happens, and the entire premise collapses. A dying future Raiden, watching everything burn, sends his past self a single message. He must win. That's it. No context. No name. Past Raiden spends the entire game misinterpreting those 3 words, intervening constantly, adjusting outcomes, trying to control every variable. Kung Lao dies because Raiden encouraged him to fight Shao Kahn directly. Liu Kang dies because Raiden's lightning strikes him during an argument over strategy. Dozens of Earthrealm's greatest warriors are dead by the end of MK9, and the only reason the realm survives at all is because Raiden finally stops trying to win. He lets Shao Kahn break the rules of Mortal Kombat, which triggers the Elder Gods to destroy him. The message meant let the enemy defeat himself. Raiden spent the whole game fighting to prevent exactly that. MKX gave him a harder edge. After Shinnok corrupts the Jinsei, Earthrealm's life force, Raiden purges it but absorbs the corruption himself, becoming Dark Raiden. His response to Shinnok is to decapitate him and deliver the severed head to the Netherrealm as a warning. That version of Raiden, cold, ruthless, done being patient, had enormous potential. MK11 erased him from the timeline in the first act, using him as a marketing misdirect before pivoting to Kronika as the real antagonist. The community still argues about whether that was wasted. It was. But here is what MK11 did get right. When Raiden finally understands that Kronika engineered his conflict with Liu Kang across every timeline, his solution is to stop existing as a god. He merges his divine essence with Liu Kang entirely. No dramatic last stand, no sacrifice in battle. He just gives everything he is to the person who should have had it all along. For a character defined by well-meaning interference, choosing to remove himself from the equation is the most Raiden thing he could have done. In MK1 2023, the reimagining is complete. Raiden is now a mortal farmer from Fengjian. Liu Kang deliberately made him human in the new timeline to prevent the divine arrogance that consumed his godly counterpart. The student becomes the teacher. The roles reverse completely, and it works because 3 decades of Raiden making things worse actually earns the moment where someone decides he needs to start over from zero. Competitively, Raiden was the first truly dominant character in MK history. In the original 1992 arcade release, he was head and shoulders above the rest. Faster ranged attack, a teleport, the torpedo dive, damage numbers nobody else could touch. He is also S tier in MK1 2023, dominating the early meta before receiving multiple nerfs. JOP placed 3rd at EVO 2011 using him, one of the most memorable competitive showings for the character. Christopher Lambert's 1995 film portrayal is beloved in a way almost no video game movie performance is. He delivers absurd lines with total commitment, steals every scene, and came back to voice and face scan a premium DLC skin for MK11 30 years later. Then there is the torpedo yell. Players spent years convinced Raiden was screaming something in Japanese. Forum threads debated the phonetics. Tobias confirmed it was always just gibberish. The character who was supposed to project divine authority kept wiping out on the studio floor during motion capture, destroying the conical hat prop in the process. That detail somehow makes him more endearing. But if Raiden is the mentor who tried too hard, the next character is the one nobody expected to matter, who turned out to be the most quietly powerful fighter in the entire roster, Johnny Cage. Johnny Cage should not be here. That is the whole point. He was designed as a joke, a Hollywood action star who enters a death tournament because critics said his martial arts were fake and he wanted to prove them wrong. His first fatality was a head punch. His signature move is a groin shot. He named his own movies things like Ninja Mime, and he is on paper the least serious person in a roster that includes Hellfire Demons and Ancient Sorcerers. And then MK1 2023 made him arguably the most dominant character in the entire game. Sonic Fox won back-to-back EVO championships using him in 2024 and 2025, and it turns out he was secretly powerful enough to punch a god the whole time. Let's back up, because the origin of Johnny Cage is genuinely the origin of Mortal Kombat itself. Midway wanted to license Jean-Claude Van Damme for a fighting game built around Bloodsport. They built a demo. Van Damme declined. He signed with Sega for a different project. The rejected Van Damme concept became a parody character named Michael Grimm, then renamed Johnny Cage. His split punch, the one that hits opponents in the groin, comes directly from Van Damme's actual finishing move in Bloodsport. The original MK prototype was literally 2 Johnny Cages fighting each other. The entire franchise started as a JCVD knockoff that couldn't get the license. His head punch decapitation was also the first fatality ever coded into MK. Ed Boon's last-minute idea. Originally, Johnny was just supposed to throw the opponent across the screen. The concept expanded. A glitch caused heads to duplicate during the animation, and the triple decapitation became an intentional signature in MK2. The franchise's most iconic feature started as a bug in the joke character's finishing move. For 20 years, his green shadow energy had no explanation. Nobody asked too hard. It looked cool. The mechanics worked, and Johnny Cage was Johnny Cage. Then MK9 revealed he is a descendant of an ancient Mediterranean war cult that selectively bred warriors as offerings to the gods. The shadow powers were always there. They just needed the right trigger. That trigger came in MKX. Sonya is about to die. Johnny's green green energy activates fully for the first time, encases his entire body, and he fights the fallen elder god Shinnok to a standstill, wins. A guy who named a movie Citizen Cage just punched a god and survived. His daughter Cassie inherited the same power and later finished what he started, defeating corrupted Shinnok outright. The joke character's bloodline became the most important genetic line in the franchise. But the reason Johnny Cage belongs in this conversation above almost everyone else is the character arc. MK9, Johnny is insufferable, arrogant, self-absorbed, treating the tournament like a publicity stunt. By MK10, he is a divorced father trying to reconnect with a daughter who doesn't respect him, leading a Black Ops unit, making real sacrifices. By MK11, old Johnny literally meets young Johnny during the timeline collapse and is visibly disgusted. "What an utter douchebag," he says, looking at himself. That moment works because the growth is genuine and earned across 3 full games. It is the best character development arc in fighting game history, and it is not particularly close. Competitively, the late-era dominance is staggering. A+ tier in MK9, S tier in MK11, and the best or near-best character in MK1 2023, where his hype meter mechanic lets him cancel specials into specials, chaining nut punches in sequences opponents cannot escape cleanly. Sonic Fox chose Johnny for both EVO 2024 and EVO 2025, winning both, tying Justin Wong's all-time record of 8 EVO titles across fighting games. He did it with the groin punch guy. In MK1 2023, a JCVD alternate skin with exclusive Van Damme voice lines was added as DLC, completing the circle on a licensing deal that fell apart in 1992 and accidentally created an entire franchise. The character who started as a rejected Van Damme game ended up being the one a generational champion chose when everything was on the line. But while Johnny Cage built his legacy on being underestimated, the next character spent 10,000 years being used and only recently took back what was always hers. Kitana. Kitana is over 10,000 years old. She spent most of them working for the man who murdered her father. That is the setup. Here is how deep it goes. When Shao Kahn conquered Edenia, he killed King Jared on the battlefield, forcibly married Queen Sindel, and took infant Kitana as his own daughter, raised her as a personal assassin, had Shang Tsung create Melina, a clone made from Kitana's DNA fused with Tarkatan biology, as a contingency in case Kitana ever discovered the truth. She was surrounded by failsafes designed to kill her the moment she stopped being useful. She never suspected any of it. For 10,000 years, she served the man who destroyed everything she came from, and she was genuinely loyal to him. That is not a villain origin story. That is something more uncomfortable. When she finally learned the truth in MK2, she turned completely. And the arc that followed, Rebel Princess, Outworld Defector, Champion of Earthrealm, Queen of Edenia, Revenant co-ruler of the Netherrealm, and eventually Kitana Khan, ruler of all Outworld, is one of the most complete character progressions in the franchise. In MK11, she personally defeats and severely maims Shao Kahn in combat. The man who raised her as a weapon gets dismantled by the weapon. Kotal Khan, injured and unable to continue ruling, appoints her his successor on the spot. She earned that throne by fighting the person who stole her original one. Her name is itself a piece of design history. Originally conceived as Kitsune for MK1, cut from that game, redesigned, and added to MK2. The name Kitsune was rejected for sounding too Japanese, so the team combined it with Katana and landed on Kitana. Ed Boon's last-minute suggestion to give her steel fans, to differentiate her visually from other fighters, produced one of the most iconic weapons in fighting game history. The Kiss of Death fatality in MK2, where she kisses an opponent and they inflate until they explode, was directly inspired by the death of villain Mr. Big in the 1973 James Bond film Live and Let Die. Ed Boon called it his favorite finishing move of MK2. Actress Catalin Zamiar constructed the original fan props herself from reflective paper for the motion capture sessions. Editors at Sega Power and Superplay named Kitana the best character in MK2 based on the fan lift alone. In early builds, it was so effective at trapping opponents in corners it nearly broke the game. Competitively, she has always been present. Strong in MK2, A+ tier in MK9, where player 16-bit became one of the most recognizable character loyalists in MK competitive history, placing 5th at EVO 2011 and 2013 exclusively using Kitana, at a time when far safer picks were available. And there is one more detail worth knowing. A false player rumor about an MK2 glitch that turned Kitana's outfit red circulated for years. NetherRealm eventually made the rumor real. That fanfiction became the character Scarlet, who debuted in MK9 as a genuine fighter. Kitana's mythology was so embedded in the community that made-up stories about her spawned an entirely new character. That kind of gravity does not come from screen time. It comes from being indispensable to the story in a way players feel even when they cannot fully articulate why. But if Kitana's power came from surviving alive for 10,000 years, the next character built his entire identity on telling them. Shang Tsung. Shang Tsung's entire moveset exists because an arcade machine ran out of memory. In MK1, 1992, the hardware could not store a unique sprite set for the final boss. The solution: give him the ability to transform into other characters and reuse their already loaded assets. A technical limitation produced the most mechanically unique fighter in the franchise, a character who can become anyone, use any move, steal any finishing move, and absorb any soul. No other character in any fighting game is built this way. His whole identity started as a workaround. The lore matches the mechanic perfectly. Originally a human sorcerer caught cheating in Mortal Kombat and sentenced to death, Shao Kahn spared him in exchange for eternal loyalty. The Elder Gods cursed him to rapidly age and die unless he constantly consumed souls. Every soul he absorbs grants him the victim's memories, knowledge, and fighting abilities. He is literally built from everyone he has ever killed. His shape-shifting is not a power he developed. It is what he is made of. He served Kahn for over a millennium while quietly plotting against him, failed repeatedly against Liu Kang across 3 games, and then finally moved. In Deadly Alliance, he teamed with Quan Chi to kill both Shao Kahn and Liu Kang in the same storyline. First time the heroes genuinely lost. He orchestrated it. In MK11 Aftermath, he manipulates every faction simultaneously, drains Shao Kahn and Sindel's souls, defeats Kronika, and attempts to conquer all of existence. Characters warned each other about his betrayal 7 separate times across the story. They were still unprepared. Here is what nobody talks about. Fatalities exist because of Shang Tsung. Originally, only the final boss was going to have a finishing move. When developers watched Johnny Cage uppercut Shang Tsung during internal testing and found it satisfying, they decided every character needed one. The system that defines Mortal Kombat was invented in response to watching someone hit Shang Tsung. Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa's 1995 film portrayal is the definitive version of the character for an entire generation. Dangerous, theatrical, completely committed. Ed Boon cast him in MK11 specifically because players visualized Tagawa when they saw Shang Tsung. He voiced and face-scanned for the role, returning to it 3 decades later. Tagawa passed away on December 4th, 2025 at age 75. Boon's tribute: he embodied danger, arrogance, and athleticism. Your soul is eternal. Competitively, he is a character of extremes. Bottom tier in UMK3, dead last in several era tier lists, then S tier in MK11 and S tier in MK1 2023. The morphing mechanic creates a skill ceiling no other character matches. Mastering Shang Tsung means partially mastering the entire roster, the eternal schemer, the character whose power was born from a hardware constraint, and the one who, more than anyone else in this list, was always going to betray you eventually. But if Shang Tsung wins through deception, the last character on this list wins by making you feel like you never had a chance in the first place. Shao Kahn. Shao Kahn is the only character in this entire video who made players want to throw their controller not because he was hard to beat, but because he personally insulted them while doing it. His MK9 boss fight is legendary for the wrong reasons. Double health bar, double damage output, super armor on most attacks. His X-ray move takes 52% of your health in a single hit, and in between all of that, he stops, points directly at you, and says, "You suck." Then he heals. Then he does it again. Community testimony: I swear at your TV for 2 hours. Curse the name of Boon. Games Radar listed him among the 12 most unfair bosses in gaming history. The game secretly reduces the AI difficulty after consecutive losses, which means players who finally beat him were beating a version the developers quietly nerfed out of mercy. Nobody told them. The lore behind that arrogance is legitimate. Shao Kahn conquered the realm of Edenia after winning 10 consecutive Mortal Kombat tournaments, the maximum allowed before forced merger. He killed King Jared on the battlefield, took Queen Sindel as his wife, raised Katana as his weapon, and built an empire across merged realms. His Wrath Hammer is canonically too heavy for 2 superhuman soldiers to lift together. He wields it one-handed. In MK3, he tears souls from nearly every living being on Earth simultaneously using a single Soul Knight. show. The invasion is not a battle, it is a harvest. John Tobias designed his mystique directly after Darth Vader, an emperor audiences sensed but never fully saw, whose presence created weight without requiring explanation. His face stayed hidden for most of the franchise. When MK11 finally showed it fully, it revealed inhuman features: sharp teeth, red slit pupil eyes, spiky cranial protrusions. The mask was not armor. It was mercy for whoever was looking at him. He is also canonically the announcer. Every finish him, every fatality, every flawless victory. That is Shao Kahn speaking in-universe, watching every fight, narrating every death. He has been in the room the entire time. And then MK11 made him playable, and he was one of the worst characters in the game. Dead last, on multiple tier lists. Characters like Jade and Liu Kang posted 6-4 matchup advantages against him. The most terrifying boss in franchise history could not win a competitive set. The community found this hilarious and correct at the same time. In MK1 2023, he is reimagined as General Shao, not an emperor, but Outworld's top military commander staging a failed coup under Empress Sindel, diminished in title, not in menace. Shao Kahn is the reason the whole roster trains. He is the standard everyone is measured against. And the fact that he spent years telling you that you suck while you kept hitting rematch is exactly why nobody who played MK in the 90s has ever forgotten him. If you enjoyed this video and want to see most loved versus most hated characters in Mortal Kombat, click the video on